Here's a look at the CBS Sports College Football Power Rankings curated by our colleague Brandon Marcello. Georgia stays in the top spot. Ohio State's been leapfrogged by Texas for the second position. Biggest fallers Notre Dame, who's lost to NIU at home, moved them from 5 to 18 in the AP poll. But for Brandon, the Fighting Irish went from 5 to 23. All right, time now to discuss the power rankings with the guys from the Cover 3 podcast. We got Danny Kanell on set and Chip Patterson joining us from home. So we're going to get to Notre Dame in a second, guys, but we're kind of starting with the teams ascending, Danny, and I'll start with you. Texas, the ranked-on-ranked matchup against Michigan. Didn't matter if the line was 4, 5, 6, or 7. They covered it, and they looked really impressive. What stood out to you?
Everything, the totality of the performance. The question going in was, could they handle the physicality of Michigan's defense? And it looked like they could call their shot. Like, what do you want a run play or do you want a pass play? Like, doesn't matter. We'll move the ball either way. In complete control throughout the entire game. Then defensively, they look great. Now, I think that was probably more about Michigan's issues at quarterback and offensive line. But if you wanted a performance for the weekend to showcase that you are a legitimate national championship contender, you've done it. And I think most of us thought Texas was that good, but to really put an exclamation point on it, I thought it was one of the more impressive wins of the year.
Yeah, among those top teams that we are considering one of the best in the country, Georgia's got the win against Clemson, which then turned around and thumped App. And now we've got Texas being able to beat the reigning champions in their own house. And so I think about specifically the case of Quinn Ewers, a player who, you know, for the last 2 years, there's always been the specter of Arch Manning. And the emotion on the sideline after some of those touchdown drives, you could just tell that he was in total command of the offense. He knew exactly what they wanted to do and how to execute it. I mean, watching Quinn Ewers play football right now is some of the most fun college football viewing experience that you can have. And so to see this Texas team be able to move the ball so effectively, and they basically called the dogs off after halftime because they knew that Michigan was not going to score a daggum point against their first stringers. So I really, really love what I saw out of Texas. Well-rounded performance. They handled business like they needed to. And now, you know, sky's the limit. This team can win a national championship.
Yeah, we all got October 19th circled there against Georgia. Let's keep it within the top 10. We're talking about Utah. Cam Rising leaving the game with a hand injury. Kyle Whittingham saying he doesn't believe it's anything serious. Even though they're number 7 here, Chip, there's kind of an asterisk because the offense looks completely different when Cam Rising isn't out there.
Yeah, that'd be 0 points scored after he left the game, Jacqueline. Extremely concerning. I thought that this was a great first half for Utah because Utah's offense, you know, they got Keithy back, you know, Micah Bernard. Like, there's so many different weapons. Money Parks is another one who's not just a cool name. He's a very shifty and skilled playmaker. And with Cam Rising calling the shots, I mean, he was able to create all kinds of explosive plays. He had that Baylor defense that Dave Aranda is now calling the plays for himself, totally on their heels. And in that first half, I was looking at Utah like, wow, this is a team that could not just win the Big 12, but maybe go cause some problems for a team like Texas if they were to meet in the college football playoff. Like, really looking at Utah in that light. But like you mentioned, he leaves the game, and all of a sudden, that offense did not score again. Now, they didn't need to because the defense was doing such a good job against Baylor, but at the same time, Utah is not the 7th best team in the country if they're rolling out their backup quarterback. Extremely important that Utah gets Cam Rising back if they're going to be able to hit their ceiling.
Yeah, totally agree with everything you said, Chip. This was a team that I felt, of all of our preseason predictions, who was going to win a conference, I felt Utah was the most confident I felt that they would win the Big 12. But it did, there's an asterisk next to that it means Cam Rising has to be healthy. Last year, you saw sort of those offensive woes that we saw in the second half versus Baylor. Those followed them all season last year. And here's the thing I'm concerned about, and I know you guys talked about this on the Cover 3 podcast as well in the reaction show. Kyle Whittingham, let's just say he's always coy with the injury reports. Like, he does not want to give you a lot of information. So until I see Cam Rising actually out there under center, not even in pregame, because he'll roll him out there in pregame and they'll be like, oh, no, he's not going to go today. We don't truly know where Cam Rising is. Until I see him under center for the Utes, I still look at Utah and say, man, I'm a little bit nervous about it. So I don't have a problem with where they are now at 7, assuming Cam Rising is going to be back, and it is minor. But there's a piece of me that says, are we sure that it's not a big deal? It is a throwing hand. Whether it's a laceration, does it impact his ability to throw the football? So I'm still keeping a very close eye on this injury.
It'll be interesting to see, too, even if Cam Rising's there. I think 3 of their next 4 games for the Utes will be on the road. So tough to navigate this particular portion of their schedule. All right, so still in the top 10, fellas, is Oregon, which many teams and prognosticators had as the number 2 or 3 team in the country. Certainly challenging for a Big Ten title, Danny. Maybe they just have to stop playing Idaho teams. I don't know, with the Vandals and the Broncos there. What do you make of the slow start, if you will, even though they're 2-0?
We just got done talking about this on the Cover 3 podcast. Like, what's your panic meter? And I put it at a 6.9, I think.
Okay. Very specific.
Yeah, exactly. But that was very much based on the preseason expectations I had, as Oregon is a national championship contender, like legitimately a national championship contender, and they have not looked like that. As far as it comes to a power ranking, I'm okay with where they are. Tommy, you mentioned the teams from Idaho. By the way, Idaho just beat Wyoming, and they're one of the better FCS programs that's out there. And Boise State might be the best team from the group of 5. So beating them, and it was close, and yes, you can make a case that they might have lost that game for a return TD late in that one that tied it up, and then they were able to drive down the field. But they also were potentially going up the best running back in the country in Aston Genty. So it wasn't pretty. It didn't look great. We're going to get them worked into the schedule more. What I am trying to figure out, is this them ironing things out, or is it a glaring cause for concern? Because Dylan Gabriel is new to the system. The offensive line has had some injury issues. So those do sound like excuses, but as long as you're winning, it doesn't matter. But from the perspective of a national championship contender, they've got to get a lot better at a lot of different positions.
Yeah, DK, I kind of talked myself into this one just a couple minutes ago, but Oregon is a stuck zipper. I see how it's all going to go once they finally get it all cleaned up, once they finally stop with the dumb procedural mistakes, once they finally get a little bit more in sync with the offensive line, once Dylan Gabriel himself calms down, because there were open wide receivers that he either did not throw to or open wide receivers that he missed. That is all stuff that can be coached as he continues to get more comfortable when the bullets are flying live in Will Stein's offensive system. And yet you have those moments like the special teams plays, like the return touchdowns, where you can just be reminded of the sheer athleticism advantage that Oregon has over almost every team on its schedule. They've got a glorified preseason with about 5 or 6 games where, like these last 2, they're going to be heavy favorites, all leading into hosting Ohio State on October 12th. And so because of the overall talent and athleticism, and because of the way the schedule is set up, like, yeah, Oregon's probably going to be at worst, a 9-3, 10-2 team. But we did not look at Oregon like a 9-3 or 10-2 team. We looked at them like they were going to be competing for Big Ten and national championships, and nothing is quite in sync. Now, if they can fix that zipper, I think it's going to be a snug little jacket that can take them all the way to conference title contention.
Danny, I have a quick follow-up here, because they get the Oregon State Beavers in Corvallis. Does that help with focus with the game prep week, or how does that help when you're actually facing a team you do want to beat?
Yes, but they also should have wanted to beat Boise State because of their performance against Iowa. Like, that was supposed to be the get-right game. So there still is this minor, and Corvallis is kind of a weird place to play. But yes, one of these days you would like to see them show up and have a complete performance and at least win by 2 touchdowns and feel like they were in control and never really were threatened.
Let's circle back to Notre Dame, of course, the biggest faller on this list. In the AP, they go from 5 to 18 after that loss against NIU, who they paid a lot of money to come and play them. And then in Brandon's listing here, go from 5 to 23. DK, I'll start with you. Is 23 the right spot considering this type of loss? Is it more of an 18? Give us your thoughts on Brandon's placement there of Notre Dame at 23.
This is the worst loss of the season so far. It might be the worst loss of the entire season when you look at a point spread perspective, where they were a 4-touchdown favorite. I don't care if you put them at 50. Like, you can earn your way back. And I get there's some where your numbers show that they were a power team and they did beat Texas A&M last week, but we really don't know what Texas A&M is yet. So this will haunt them. This will follow them. And here's what I think about this loss. I think this keeps them out of the playoff. I know it's an expanded playoff and there's 12 teams, but if you have a one-loss season, you are going to be compared to other probably two-loss teams, and there's no other team, I think, that would have a loss that is worse than Northern Illinois. And then even more importantly, who is left on your schedule to impress? Florida State is off to a slow start. That's not going to look great. USC is probably that game that you circle and say, there's one to really build the resume. Georgia Tech just lost, so that's one that looked a little bit tougher. Louisville's a game, top 25 opponent at South Bend. But before we even worry about them in that conversation, they have got to fix things on the offensive side of the ball. So all of it in totality, I think Notre Dame is done as far as the playoffs are concerned.
Danny, if Notre Dame plays with the quality and the attention to detail and the coaching that Notre Dame played with against Northern Illinois, they're going to lose at Purdue to the Spoilermakers on America's Most Watched Network, the Network of Stars, this Saturday on CBS. And I ain't just saying that to be a company, man. I'm very serious. Notre Dame, we cannot talk about Notre Dame running the table and will they make the playoff? Because if they play the way they did against Northern Illinois, they are not running the table. I don't know if they'll beat Stanford. I definitely don't think that they would beat Louisville. And Georgia Tech is another team that could go give them some problems. So the key for me is less about trying to put the pieces together for a playoff resume and try to imagine what it's going to look like when they're 11-1 at the end of the year. They got to get better, because that was just like more than a hangover. That was revealing, because that win at Texas A&M was because Notre Dame has an excellent defense. And you know what that defense did? That defense only allowed 16 points to Northern Illinois. That defense is one of the tops in the country in terms of scoring defense through 2 weeks of the season. But Riley Leonard, the offensive line, and the offense as a whole, just really head scratching in terms of them just not being able to find anything in terms of consistency, explosiveness. It's just not there. And if they can't get the offense better, they won't beat the other teams on their schedule.
How quickly things can change. That's why we like college football. After week 1, we're talking about them as a surefire CFP appearance, and week 2, very different conversation. Chip Patterson, Danny Kanell, we certainly appreciate it. Talking about Brandon Marcello's CBS Sports college football power rankings, and for more from the fellas, make sure you check out the Cover 3 podcast. They got you covered all season long. Reaction pods, storylines, everything you got to know. You can watch right now by scanning that QR code.